Hi, welcome to this video. This video was supposed to be a complete birth story, but it landed up being more of a third trimester. Anyway, make sure to watch it because when I post the birth story, which will be the next upload, you will need all of the context that we've given you through the course of this particular video. So make sure to grab your chai, coffee, lunch, dinner, breakfast, whatever it is, because it's a long video. It's packed with details, and watch the birth story when it comes up next. Okay, let's get into it. Here's a video I've been so excited to film, fantasized about filming and sharing. And I can't believe that here we are. But the little disclaimer we should give you is that baby boy is sleeping just behind the camera. So if you hear him cooing at any point of time, we might have to take a quick break to check in on him. Yeah. Hopefully he stays fast asleep for the duration of us filming this. And welcome to today's video. If you're watching this channel for the first time, I'm Anam, a first-time new mom, and this is my husband, Gerard, a first-time new dad. As of today, we're just 2 months postpartum, and I'm here to share with you my birth story. Okay, so we have to start out with giving a certain amount of backstory to this birth story. My channel does carry detailed vlogs of my first trimester and my second trimester. However, my third trimester vlog is non-existent because it was the most dramatic phase of my life, to put it in the nicest way that I can think of. I was very nauseous, very sick, very unwell through months, part of 2, 3 and 4. And then months 5 and 6 and some parts of 7 were a breeze. What I didn't expect, and I had heard about how the third trimester replicates your first trimester, what I didn't expect was that my third trimester would be my first trimester on coke. So let me start off by professing that my third trimester was basically one where I already had a little bit of a warning from my doctors here in Bombay that I was headed towards intense dehydration because of how much my body was just ejecting everything I was eating. Yeah. I got used to it. I didn't get used to it. Then the phase happened again. And so I have 2 gynecologists that I was consulting with here in Bombay. I'll give you context on why in case you haven't seen those first trimester, second trimester vlogs. My first gynecologist is my main gynecologist who my family, all the women in my family have gone to, who we consulted during my first pregnancy, the one that was a miscarriage in 2023, correct?
Who also delivered her?
Who delivered me, my brother, my nephew, my niece, some 20 kids in our social circle. However, she's like literally my nanny's friend. Yeah. So she's really, really senior. And because she's super senior, she stopped performing deliveries in 2023. So she told me that I would have to sign up with a different gynecologist, register at a different nursing home / hospital, which is where I would deliver. And so I found a different gynecologist who came very highly recommended, apparently very popular with all the social circle friends, moms on the internet. The reviews were great. And obviously what was the cherry on the cake was that she was located right here in Bandra, which is her nursing home was a stone's throw away from where we live. Literally right in the middle of our old house to the new house we're now in, right? It was ekdam beach mein. And we loved her. So we were now, second trimester onwards, consulting with 2 gynecologists for everything. One was an acting gynecologist, but the other one was just someone who was
more like a consultant.
Yeah, who was our safe space and who had a very high percentage of natural vaginal births. Whereas the new doctor, unfortunately, had a very high rate of C-sections. As someone who wanted to have a vaginal birth as much as possible, I wanted to keep my earlier doctor in the loop so that I knew I was on the right track and I was being led in the right direction. If you live in India, if you are familiar with the way the doctors work in India, especially right now, when it comes to births, it's really sad that there are such high rates of C-sections, even in cases where C-sections could have been avoided with more patience. So I just wanted to keep my previous gynecologist on.
Also one of the major factor was that gynecologist knew the family history, knew her right from childhood.
Like she scolded me on like a couple of times, literally, like because she took that liberty with me because I was literally the child she birthed with mama. So there was that comfort level as well, which was really nice. Anyway, so when I hit my third trimester, I wanted to travel. We were in between moving homes, and I made sure that I didn't check with one, but I checked with both gynecologists that I'm okay to travel. My plan to travel was supposed to be mid-September to mid-endish of October, 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And both the gynecologists told me I was in the clear to actually travel all the way through end of November. Because I was due in Jan first week is what I was told I was doing. So we were totally chill. We were like, okay, cool, this is awesome. I can go and come. Unfortunately, my baby born would have had to be without the husband because he was looking into the work here.
Yeah.
And my mom was going on the trip, and I was like, I'm kind of just tagging along with her. We were supposed to be in California, and then we were also supposed to do trips to Texas and to Georgia. My mom has been into clothes for decades at this point, and she supplies to a few boutiques everywhere, and we have a lot of family all over the US as well. And so I was like, I'm gonna chill, I'm gonna make travel vlogs, have a fun pregnancy, and
And then life happened.
they say that you make plans and then God laughs at you, and it was just one of those things. I want to make a side note over here. I'm going into such details about this entire story, not to convince anyone anything. We're just here to share our story. You can, because we've seen some of the comments, you know what I mean? And we're not here to convince anyone about anything. We're here to tell our truth, and we're here to share our story. And if you choose to believe us, that's awesome. If you choose not to believe us, whatever, move on. I mean, it's not in my life really impacts yours. I am just here to genuinely share with you everything that went down, because this is where shit got really real for us. So mid-September, I left for the US. The first 10-12 days, I was fine. I did start throwing up on my literally second day as soon as I got into California, but we just assumed it was the pregnancy part of things, and it was chill. And I had all my SOS medicines with me. I usually hate having medicines, but through my pregnancy, I was a very good girl with having my medications on time, right?
So on those medications, the doctors here prescribe, the gynecologists here prescribe. So we bought in bulk for last month or so, right?
Like 6 weeks we had taken stock.
6 weeks stocks. By the time she would have returned, we would replenish the stock. So that was the plan.
Yeah.
So she only took 6 weeks worth of medicine.
And literally my ticket was booked for only September to October at the end of the day. So I was not anticipating that I was going to stay back. Contrary to the mastermind image we're both being given on how we planned things. Wow, I wish we could have been at that level of, thinking, but whatever. So everything was going fine. My vomit started when I was there, and this is where things shifted. In the third week after I got there, I had a minor slip, like down the stairs. I was in one of my kaftans, and it wasn't anything serious. It was nothing serious. He got serious because when I told him he was here and I was there, so obviously, the way it sounds is more serious than it needed to be.
Yeah, so I don't know whether the previous vlogs you guys have seen the glimpses of the house.
There's lots of stairs.
That we were staying in. There were lots of stairs here. So there's this, as soon as you enter the house, there's this living room, so to speak.
Formal living room.
And then you go up the stairs to the family living room from the kitchen.
No, and not just to get there, right? Even like from the driveway to up is a very steep flight of stairs. Yeah. Anyway, I was inside. It was nothing major, but obviously everyone got scared because I was 7 months, in my 7th month of being pregnant at that time, and they told me, just please let's go to the doctor and just be on the safe side, essentially.
Yeah. Also, I mean, what had happened the previous year, obviously, was there at the back of my head, and I was here in Bombay. I couldn't do anything about it. So I think they rushed you to the ER the same day. Right?
Yeah, I have a caveat to mention here because you mentioned the miscarriage, right? A couple of comments I read said I had a high risk pregnancy. I didn't have a high risk pregnancy. My first trimester was a medium risk one because of the previous miscarriage, because I was 32 years, now 33 years. But I didn't have a high risk pregnancy. So I just kind of want to clarify that. I will say the first trimester was medium risk, but the first trimester is tricky for anyone, even more so for someone who has had a miscarriage in the past. But it's not like I was in a fetal condition or in some critical state, nothing like that.
Yeah, doctors didn't categorize this as a high-risk pregnancy.
I wouldn't have been given clearance to travel only.
Yeah, exactly.
I had my fit to flies from both doctors, everything. Like, no doctor would let me fly to begin with if I had a critical...
We were obviously extra cautious because of what had happened the previous year. So probably in our heads it was a high-risk pregnancy or whatever, but it wasn't categorized, it wasn't...
we were just over-cautious parents to be, okay? Anyway, so when I had that little slip and everyone said just go to the doctor, I got taken to the ER because what I didn't know was you can't just call a family doctor and take an appointment in California. You get taken to the ER for anything that could be an emergency. So I got taken to the ER. Now what they do in California, and if you live in the West, you probably already know this, so I'm going to specify this for those of us who live in India because it's not the usual thing here. When you get taken in for one thing, they do tests for everything. Like they do tests for everything, like they will make sure they're not missing out on anything because suing hospitals and doctors or whatever is apparently really common over there. So even though I went in for a slip and to make sure everything was fine, spoiler alert, most things were fine. It turns out that my dehydration that I was constantly getting warnings of was very, very severe. Very, very severe in a sense. Apparently the average dehydration unit level it should be in the range of 10 to 12. I was sitting in the range of 3. So it was like one of those things where my body was just ejecting all forms of hydration. And mind you, I always have water next to me. I'm a very big water drinker. And mind you, I had a sippy with me in California also. I was like, bhalle main chutti pe aayi hu, main travel vlogs banaungi, main idhar jaungi, main udhar jaungi. I'm pregnant and I'm going to take care of my body in every way it needs to be taken care of. And so I always had a sippy on me. I always had a water bottle on me. And when they told me that my dehydration levels are that aggressive, we got a little bit worried. Also because apparently there is some connection between your level of dehydration and wanting to have and being able to have a vaginal birth. That is also something that was a little bit of a downer for me because I was hell-bent on having a vaginal birth since the very beginning. It's not because I'm not coming from the point of view that, oh, C-section is bad or easy. I don't think anything is easy when it comes to childbirth. I just wanted to go through the experience of a vaginal birth, period. And so I took care of myself. Things, obviously they kept me in the hospital for about 8 to 9 hours. This guy kept video calling me through Yahan Ka Night, India Ka Night. I was supposed to leave for Texas, which obviously my mom and I then cancelled because I said I can't travel anymore. Like I can't travel right now. Not to Texas. I could travel to India. There was no India cancellation plan at this point. But doctor said try and chill as much as you can. And so I said, listen, we've got 2-3 more weeks. I'd rather just chill here, hang here, and do my thing. So we cancelled Texas for that moment and Georgia, and we came back home. Now when we came back home, a couple of days later, I started feeling very dizzy, very fainting spells, like the dehydration got very, very, very intense. And so I was taken to the ER again. There they gave me medicines. The first time they didn't give me medicines. This time they gave me medicines. And they were like, okay, you need to hydrate the shit out of yourself. And I was put on IVs and things like that. IV पहली बार भी दिया था, दवाइयाँ नहीं दी थी. इस बार IV के साथ दवाइयाँ भी दी थी. Like additional खाने को. And still we were like, okay, I've got this. It's all good. Then again I continued. We kept taking the medicine. Everything was okay. My mom's Texas trip had previously gotten cancelled because I couldn't go along at that time. But she really did need to go later. Having said that, I would have been alone if she would have gone. Alone in the sense, not fully alone because I still had Chachu, Chachi and cousins, but naturally everyone is busy with school, work, college, and they went above and beyond in taking care of me. Like the fact that I was supposed to be there in holiday mode, but now I was there in holiday unwell mode, and they have taken care of me like I can't even begin to explain, right? Because for us it's a shock that the chutti is getting ruined, but for them also it's a shock because it's like responsibility आ जाती है कि अब तुम्हारे घर में एक pregnant लड़की नहीं, भले ही घर की बच्ची है, but pregnant unwell बच्ची है. मैं तो उनके लिए बच्ची हूँ, that's why I'm calling myself बच्ची in this regard. Plus I didn't want mama to cancel her work trip. Lo and behold, Sir shows up in California, and my mom gets to go on her trip, and I have him by my side. At this point, the plan is pretty much that we would have flown back just about 2-3 weeks later, which was also totally okay because, like I said, I had clearance to fly all the way till all through November, and I extended a little bit. It was cool. It was not cool from the work point of view because I had some work commitments that definitely needed adjusting, realigning. All of that is a separate story, unrelated to the birth. Ah, you're awake, sir.
He wants to have a word.
He wants to come and be part of this video.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Anyway, so one of the reasons that I did decide to come to the US was because I became a little paranoid and I became worried after those years. Plus the fact that, I knew she was surrounded by family, etc., but I just wanted to be there.
And in a way also, he over here was like living on the sofa in our old house. His parents, I think, was still just coming in transition over here. Everything was, a lot of chaos was happening at the same time because वहाँ पे वो हो रहा था, यहाँ पे house shifts हो रहे थे. There was shifting. I think you guys hopefully have seen the vlog where he moved everything from the old house to the new house. The possession of this house was super late. His parents, because of which his parents had to come later than planned from Chennai to Bombay because they've moved cities and everything needed to be aligned logistically. I think at that point of time, those few months really, not just that point of time, everything was up in the air and everything was super chaotic. But him showing up in California made me feel so much better because I had him by my side, and I feel like, we all have that one anchor relationship in our lives. It could be your best friend, it could be your mother, it could be a sibling, it could be your partner. For me, it is my partner.
Aww.
Where everything just kind of, even if everything is up in the air and then this is good, everything else feels like ये तो हम देख लेंगे, ये तो हम मिलके दुनिया को संभाल ही लेंगे. It'll all come together when it's due. And so I felt okay. We continued to chill again because my continued medication, IV, this, that, everything was going fine. Till our next ER visit happened, which was because I went through a day and a half with no fetal movement whatsoever. And that was yes, now there is fetal movement happening right here. And that was obviously a very big red flag, and that day in particular scared the shit out of me. We have the cat baby making noise over there, we have the baby cooing over here.
It's pretty much a baby household now. Neighbors.
We just live in it. We're just here to take care of them.
So when that incident happened, so usually what they say, correct me if I'm wrong, she knows much better about these things, but usually what they say is that you need to track your movement. You need to feel about 10 movements in an hour, right?
10 takes every 2 hours.
But the time to track those movements, they say, is after dinner or something,
It's whenever you know your baby in the stomach is most active.
Okay.
Like for me, my baby was most active later in the night after I'd had some dessert post dinner, or early in the morning after I'd had breakfast. Lo and behold, that's exactly how he is even now. Those are his active hours even now. But yeah, you are supposed to do that. And at that particular, the day and a half, I had barely felt 3 or 4 very slight flutters. No aggressive kicks like I normally do. No, nothing. It was, even those 3-4 movements were very negligible. And they were negligible enough for me to be like, I'm not feeling anything. Is this, obviously it's not okay or normal, but what do we do?
And it's not like in India where you can just pick up the phone, call up a doctor.
You don't have access to calling a doctor over, you have to basically go to the ER for anything's emergency. Even when you call the doctor, that line that tells you, press this, press that, they're like, if you think this is an emergency, it's pre-recorded. Please call 911 or go to your emergency. So, emergency is what...
And Chachu actually said, let's go, take you to the ER, it's okay, it's better to... Yes, we went to the ER. it's better to get yourself checked out. You don't know what it is and stuff like that. So yeah. So we went to the ER. I think it was in the evening, late
This
evening.
ER visit was around, it was in the evening, it was around 5 or just after 5 or something like that. Literally by the time we got discharged, this time I was discharged past 1:30. It was almost 2 a.m. by the time we had reached home that particular night.
I remember our cousin getting us
McDonald's. Because I was hungry, I was starving. They did, as usual, they do like all tests over there when you are taken in. So I'll tell you what happened over here, right? How do you explain it?
Okay, so
You have a meter that tells you
Yeah.
whether it's Braxton Hicks or whether they are actual contractions.
no, what they tell you is whether you're having contractions or not.
Correct.
So I mean, Braxton Hicks or contractions depends upon whether you're dilated, not dilated,
Correct.
and stuff like that.
At this point, I was not dilated. Very important point to note for this context of the story.
So she was hooked up to monitors, she was checked, etc. Because she said that she doesn't feel any movement, she was hooked up to monitors, they were constantly checking the baby's
I was
heart rate.
given this giant glass of ice water. Like ice meaning I like ice water, but this was like freezing. Like I cannot tell you how much. I've never had such cold water in my life, kind of ice water. And I was being made to like chug it non-stop. And I was just chugging this ice water non-stop in one of those gowns, and so I kept running to pee as well. And every time I needed to pee, I had to unhook myself of like 4 monitors from
yeah.
everywhere.
So while she was hooked up to the monitors, while they were checking their checking baby's heart rate, which was absolutely fine, he was absolutely fine. He just was chilling. He just wasn't planning on making any moves. That's how he was. He was just chilling for those 2 days. Right?
We still didn't know it was a baby boy, at this
Yeah.
point.
Yes, we just knew the baby was just chilling, right? So when they hooked up, and one of those meters, actually the doctors or the nurses who are treating us
Alhamdulillah, bless you.
came and said, "Honey, you're having contractions." So we were like very, very, very surprised because she wasn't feeling a thing.
And mind you, this is when what we're talking about right now is like November, but first half and 8th month technically I was in. Is that correct? 8th month. And I was like, how can I be having contractions? Because from what everyone has told me in these Gharka Nuskas, old wives' tales, whatever you call it, the 8th month is your most delicate period, they tell you. And I was like, if I'm having contractions, if I'm having contractions to give birth to you, but I couldn't feel anything.
So we were A, surprised, B, very, very worried. Because if she can't feel that she's having contractions, what happens? In fact, I remember you even asking the nurse that if I'm having contractions right now, and if I give birth in the coming hours, will the baby be alright? Because the baby obviously will be classified as a premature baby, right? Probably premature. I don't remember which week you were in exactly, but
November first half only it was, I'm pretty sure.
okay.
Because it was at this point that they said that you can't travel back. So oh yes. I couldn't travel back after this because then the nurses were like, hello, if you can't feel your contractions and you have contractions on a long flight, what you gonna do?
So yeah, so that obviously was the major discussion that we had, the major call that we had to take, because even we felt, I mean, it was a 17-hour long flight, right? So if she's having contractions that she can't feel, and if something happens on the flight, then what happens?
And mind you, leading up to this particular day and a half where I couldn't feel any movements, apart from the dehydration, there were no complications. Like, there was nothing serious. There were little things here and there, lots of vomiting, couldn't keep food down, fainting spells, this, that was there. Yes. But there was absolutely no, like, nothing जो जान को danger है मुझे या baby को. Until here, we were still totally okay. In fact, this was just after they threw me a baby shower. So, like, we were in chill mode in a way that, okay, now we've got the hang of this, we know what to do, we're okay. Like I said, I felt like once I had him by my side, ab to sab kar
You're just counting on the days.
Yeah, it was...
Counting on the days to even come back to India, because at that point in time, we... like she mentioned, right? We were in the middle of shifting houses and lots of balls in the air, counting down the days to
I hadn't
actually come back.
selected so many of the furnishings, laminates, kitchen, bathroom things.
So we were,
So much to do.
so we're counting on the days to actually come back to the new house, which she hadn't seen. She hadn't stepped foot into the house. So by that time, we'd hoped that at least we knew that not all the work would have been completed, but at least the civil work would have been completed.
Yeah.
It would have been in a livable state for a pregnant woman to stay.
Which was the plan. I also, by the way, side note, had a studio apartment booked very close to the house, which I was going to use for my shoots. So I was like, मुझे यहाँ पे दिन के time पे नहीं रहना. I have to just come and live here in the night. For my work shoots and all of that, I had a 6-month arrangement made for me very close by. Baby is waking up.
Once.
Like not waking up, baby is like in full blow. Sorry, baby got really active, needed a break. Where were we? So we were counting down days and everything was pretty much okay till this entire twist in the tail, which the doctors then said, listen, if you have contractions through a long flight, we don't advise this. At this point, I had to have a conversation with both my Bombay gynecologists and say, listen, this is what's happened. They knew everything all along the way, the dehydration, fainting spells. I was literally on chat with them, both of them, consistently through my trip.
Because they would have been the doctors who finally deliver the baby, right?
And I had my comfort with them only, na, at the end of the day. Like, I knew I was coming back home. I thought I was coming back home. And so it was both of them saying, you can't get on this long flight, that really was the decision maker for us on our behalf. It's not like we were like, oh this, oh that. Were we happy or sad by the decision? We were neutral about it because we knew.
We were sad because it was not a easy decision to make, because there was a lot of things that would have that was up in the air. Like the housework had to be supervised. Now we have to do it remotely. Our brand work, while we have a kick-ass.
No, I mean about the baby. Was it a happy or a sad decision? It was a neutral decision.
That was, I mean, anything.
On other factors, there were lots of sad things for sure. Like the house stuff you're saying. I lost my big campaign work that I had here. Our brand Verified had a launch scheduled for March, which is not happening anymore. Like there were a lot of other side effects which made the situation sad. But we weren't happy or sad by the doctor saying stay in place. It kind of just worked out
It
in a
wasn't,
way.
okay, let me put it this way. It wasn't a comfortable decision because at the end of the day, if we were back in India, we had the support system. I mean, we had an entire army of support system here. If anything were to go wrong or if we needed help, etc. There, of course, we were with family who took care of us like their own children, so to speak. But the fact that they also had their lives, you know, they also had the work.
And we felt like we were imposing.
Yeah,
like
this
it
was-
wasn't them who made us feel like that. This was self-inflicted guilt, where we were like, feel like, oh God, like we're really like.
Yeah. So there's only so much that you can ask of them, right? I mean, beyond a point, it just feels, you just don't feel comfortable, right?
I think that because we're not by nature, we're not like takers. It's very difficult to take, even though we're not asking. And we will forever be indebted to my Chachu Chachi and cousins for being beyond gracious in the way they handled the entire situation.
And obviously, when they got to know, they wouldn't hear a word of us trying to even go back. They insisted that we stay, obviously, because baby's health and her health comes first. Everything else can be, you know, managed, looked at, arranged, worked through, rest of it.
Which is literally what happened. Both my cousins have given up literally their rooms for us, and like I can't even begin to list
Right.
the.
My cousin and your cousin.
Ha! He's hijacked my cousin now. But my point is, they went above and beyond, right? From a non-baby related thing, there were a lot of side effects and a lot of collateral damages that definitely happened, whether it was emotional, mental, financial, time difference. There was a lot. I can get into that in a separate video. So our house was in process. I had campaigns we were losing. The Verified launch didn't happen. And in the middle of all this, I was suddenly getting a lot of random internet hate. If you've made it this far into the video and through the course of this entire video, I have a feeling this video is going to be so long, I'm going to split it up into 2 parts. But go ahead and ask me your questions if they're not answered in both of these 2 parts down below. Because I'll tell you what, reputation and credibility are something we take very seriously. And it's something that a lot of people said me a lot of random shit over those few months. Forget the fact that I was pregnant. I don't think we should be making assumptions about anyone's life. Like I had random people telling me, in the DMs, I hope you get deported. I'm like, do you even know what I'm going through? Do you even know what my life is at right now? How much of a, like, I was gaining such a beautiful thing by being on the journey to have this baby, but I was also going through this process, as it is, pregnancy is complicated enough, like emotionally, mentally. But like, I was also going through this process when I was at this crossroads where I was like, oh my god, everything's up in the air. I don't think I can fully explain it in words. I don't think either of us can. But it was all so beautiful on one side, but there were so many things that we were in the middle of.
So,
on
like,
the other side.
yeah, so it wasn't a comfortable decision to take at all, even though certain aspects of the decisions were taken out of our hands. Like she mentioned, the housework was happening. The baby wouldn't have the support system. We wouldn't have the support system when the time came, as much as we would have.
Mind you, my father was still here.
Yeah.
My father was here. The only people I had over there, my family that lives there, I had. Like 80% of my family does live there. But my close family, who I'm close to, because naturally we live in Bombay, it was just Jerry, me, and my mom.
Yeah. And then my dad and mom had moved to Bombay, to a strange city where they were all alone. They didn't know anyone apart from us and obviously her family, right? Now, her mother was also with us there. Papa was here with Adnan and the kids and Sana and stuff like that. So they didn't have me, right, around them to help them settle in, move in, etc. So that also, they said, don't worry about us, we'll
do what's best for the baby.
Yeah, we'll manage it, etc. So we got on calls with them obviously every day, checking up on them. One good thing was Parakala stayed with them, helped them settle in and stuff like that. The other good thing was they moved into an old house, which is basically plug and play for them. All they had to do was move in with their clothes and whatever furniture that they wanted to get. Everything was done up, so they didn't have to worry about setting up the house or constructing or making anything new and stuff like that. So that was one of the advantages of them moving into the old house. And that was one of the reasons why, I also read somewhere some comments saying, why didn't you just stay in the old house, why didn't you stay here, why didn't you stay there, etc. So please try and understand that my family was moving into our old house, obviously with their stuff. Right, and they would have taken. They're old. They're senior people, so obviously they would have taken the bedroom. Where would she have slept? सोचो ना, मतलब बोलने से पहले थोड़ा सोच लिया करो.
They had things. I mean, they were downsizing from a 4 BHK bungalow in Chennai to a 2-bedroom apartment in Mumbai.
Yeah,
There's
so
a huge size difference.
they sold the house. Where would they have stayed in Chennai? Right, so they obviously had to move in here to this house with their stuff.
It's okay. We'll answer all these things in a Q&A. We're digressing from birth story. It's just that some of the comments completely threw us off because we were like,
yeah, it was unnecessary.
We were like, wow. We were like, ये तो नया angle है, ये तो like there's no logic. Coming back to what was happening with the baby at this point. So, because of all the circumstances, we're now staying back. A very big detail that I think I need to throw in here, and also I guess what will make you realize that nothing from this point on was planned in California. I have an ailing grandmother who was unwell for the last 4 to 6 years. She suffered from dementia, she was unwell, she couldn't move, she couldn't talk. She had 3 staff members 24/7 around her, and her only child that lived in Bombay who physically took care of her was my mother. So the fact that my mom was with me in California, like we were in California for a 5-week chutti, was because one of her brothers was in India at the same time. Now that we were extending, and he extended as much as he could here, at some point he needed to fly back to his work in America, which left my mom in forever daughter guilt for those couple of weeks where none of the kids were here. Of course, my dad was there like literally multiple times a week looking after his mother-in-law. My brother was there. My cousin mom was there. My cousin uncle was there. But my mom, being as close she is to her mother, was like, I have an unwell pregnant daughter on one side, whose side she couldn't leave. And then there was her super unwell 86-year-old mother on the other side, who she had enough staff for back in India, but that she wanted to be by her side. And at this point, when it came down to I can't fly back, I started to convince her to come back to India. because I said I have Jerry by my side, I have Tasneem Chachi, I have Arif Chachu. I have 80% of my family on my dad's side is in California. Cousins, this one, I have more family there than I had here. I may be very close to only a few of them, of course, because everyone in India we're very close to, because वो physical distance आ जाता है. But I was like, just go back, Mama. Because if something happened to Nani, I want to be able to live with the guilt that she wasn't able to be there for her mother. And I'm so glad that even though it took me 3-4 weeks of convincing her, she came back to India. And I'm so glad that she did eventually listen to me, because literally 8 days after she landed in Bombay, my Nani passed away, and at least she got the last 1 week by her side non-stop. The guilt that she had between prioritizing being mother or being daughter, and she kept prioritizing being a mom to me, and I kept telling her go, because I was carrying daughter guilt and granddaughter guilt that everything's gone amiss, and somewhere I was blaming myself in a sense. Not that biologically I couldn't control what was happening, but in this scenario of the family equation in terms of keeping my mom away from my grandmother for that period was a very big guilt that I was carrying. And I was just glad that eventually she did come to India, because she got to be next to her for that last 8-day period. And because, again, she was coming into India, my parents wanted to be by my side during this period. So my dad came to me to California. My grandmother passed away while my father was in flight. It was when he landed and he saw the string of messages that he had found out what had happened. Or obviously he would have stayed to kind of, do the last rites with my mom and everything, and then he would have flown to me. Like, life and these kind of things are just not planned, and we made the best of what we could at a given point of time.
And it wasn't like we were having fun there, right? I mean, here Nani passed away. Like I said, my parents were alone. The house was in shambles. It wasn't just going by the timelines. So the fact that
finances were draining.
The fact that we had to extend actually kind of worked out from the house perspective, because if we had come back, we had nowhere to stay, right? We couldn't stay at the old house, we couldn't stay at her parents' house, because their house is full, right? The kids have tuitions.
The studio that I mentioned, we couldn't stay there either because it was in a commercial building, so you're not allowed to live there. Let me clarify that also. That they'll say, why weren't you living in the studio? You can't live there.
Obviously, it didn't make sense for us to come back and stay in a hotel till the house got done.
Yeah.
Right? So that didn't make sense anyway.
I think he's broken up again.
So yeah, so that was that. It wasn't an easy decision to make, it wasn't a comfortable decision to make, but it was a decision that had to be made to various circumstances.
And at the end of it, it all turned out okay. Like, we're not gonna make it sound like we want sympathy. We don't want sympathy. We just don't want random hate.
Yeah.
It's not required. Like, it is, and we're the kind of people, if we're mentally prepared for anything, we'll take it on. The only fuck up in this entire scenario was that we weren't mentally prepared for a lot of things. In the process, we were pumping each other up and gassing each other up and boosting each other's morale up. Had we been mentally prepared, I think we would have sailed through a lot simpler. But it is what it is.
Coming back to the birth story. So once that decision was made and once Papa had come over, she was still going through a lot of those symptoms, so to speak. But I think by this time her Braxton Hicks contractions has started kicking in.
Every evening
it used to happen. There was a specific window of time it used to happen. So we felt that, okay, fine, this is something that we've read about, this is something that we watched videos about. So we know this. We know this is Braxton Hicks and stuff like that.
By now, I also had that regular doctor I had to, I won't say keep in touch with, like you couldn't call them, but that I now had to make an appointment with and go to because I needed it. I was in the end of the 8th month even actually. And my Braxton Hicks, like Jerry said, literally every evening after 6:30 would start at any time. 6:30 to 11, 12 in the night, there would be this 40-minute window where I would be in pain. Also worth noting that somewhere around this stage, I had also dilated 2 centimeters and I was just sitting at 2 centimeters dilated for like 24 days. For 3.5 weeks. before I gave birth. So
we had to get tests regularly. A lot of tests had to be done. In fact, if I remember correctly, a couple of gynecologists also refused to meet us because we were so far along in the pregnancy. Right? So it wasn't easy getting an appointment as well. And if you guys are familiar with the US healthcare system, for all its greatness, for all its professionalismness, there was also, it wasn't like India where you could just pick up the phone, you could just walk into a clinic and stuff like that, right? There you have to take proper appointments. The doctor has to approve of those appointments for you to even make it to the clinic.
I had to send all my India files to them. And again, I wasn't carrying all my India files to begin with. So those files were between some carton between both the houses. We had to get those scanned. It was a process. It was a process, to say the least. It was a process. And it was frustrating. Okay, so by this point, I'm sitting at 2 centimeters dilated. That we know of, I was 2 centimeters dilated for about 24 days. It could have been more. Obviously, we're seeing 3.5 weeks from the point of where one of my checkups, the doctor told me I was dilated. I was living in perpetual discomfort. My dehydration levels had managed to go from that 3-ish range to about a 5, but it was nowhere near where it should have been, which was in the 10 to 12 range. Mind you, unlike the system in India when it comes to deliveries, over there they push you for vaginal birth as much as possible, which was the one very good thing compared to this system. However, because I was so dehydrated, there was this conversation of a C-section that was coming up. And like I said earlier, I was hell-bent on a vaginal birth, if possible, as much as possible. That was looming like a cloud over my head because I didn't want to have a C-section. I had heard and seen a lot about how people take so much more time to recover and biologically, emotionally bounce back physically from C-sections. When I say physically, I don't mean in terms of body and look and size. I mean in terms of just healing and recovery. And so I really wanted to have a vaginal birth as much as possible. But again, consulting with the doctors back in India, they were like, just get your checkup done, like a pre-op checkup done, so that in case I need to have a C-section, that Jan ka safety thing is there. And this is on December 30th that I finally said, okay, I think I started my 40th week by then. Imagine I was like all the way full term pregnant. Sitting in discomfort, living in discomfort, getting contractions every evening, still chugging water like my life depends on it, but nothing is getting retained, still vomiting multiple times a day. Finally, I said, okay, for saying no a lot, I said I'll go in for a pre-op checkup, and based on what they tell me there, we'll take a call whether I need to say yes to a C-section or whether we can finally have if we can still have a vaginal.
And it's not like you can walk to a clinic and demand a C-section there. The doctors need to give you a go-ahead for a C-section A, and that go-ahead depends on medical reasons, right? Otherwise, you just can't go and have a C-section. You can't demand a C-section.
It's not normal over there. Like, it's not as casual as it is where, like, I hear 9 out of 10 births in my own social circle over here in our generation are now C-sections. It's just not like that.
So our doctor actually told us C-section was a possibility simply because of the water levels in her body.
So 30th December afternoon, it was around 2 o'clock, I had an appointment for a pre-op. My cousin Zoya drove Jerry and me because everyone was at work, college, all of that. And she was on Christmas break at this point. And very, very, very uncomfortable Anam has shown up to this hospital with husband and cousin, and I'm sitting there holding my stomach, like just like rocking myself. Rocking myself has been key to multiple moments of where I've been able to physically handle myself, even during birth, even like during labor. And when you were filling out the form, this lady who I assume is a nurse sitting at the front desk on front desk duty on that day, God bless her soul, really, because she saw my state and she was like, why are you filling a pre-op for a C-section? And so he said, because the doctor wanted to just, kind of get it out of the way for a backup just in case, because I'm 40 weeks pregnant, discomfort, dilated, yada, yada, yada. And she saw my state and she said, you should be sent up right away to L&D, second floor. L&D is labor and delivery. Second floor. And I'm looking at Zoya, Zoya's looking at me, Jerry's looking at me, and she goes, you look like you're having contractions. And mind you, my Braxton Hicks is evening ka time ka, which I could feel. But when she told me I was having contractions, I said, what if I'm having contractions again and not being able to feel it like the time I was taken in the ER? And I was like, okay. They were like, just stay put. They literally called someone who put me on a wheelchair, wheeled me over, took me to the second floor. Lo and behold, I was about 3 centimeters dilated by now, and they said your progress has been so slow. We think you should, and also because I was 40 weeks pregnant at this point of time, they were like, we can help you by moving it along, but they said because you're in so much pain, we will kick off with giving you morphine. Okay, this video has gone on too long. My camera has heated up several times. I've swapped batteries, memory cards, stopped several times to feed the baby. I'm going to continue part 2 separately for everything that happened at the hospital. So stay tuned, subscribe, and if you have any questions, ask them down below. I will film the AMA for a complete life update on things not related to the baby, birth, delivering there, etc. as well. See you soon.